Hello, my name is Donna. If you had told me a year ago that I would be sitting on my living room couch in Kingston, New York, watching my own mother and sister being dragged away in handcuffs while my newborn daughter fought for her life in an incubator, I would have called you insane. But life has a twisted way of showing you the monsters hiding behind the faces of the people you love the most. I was 8 months and 10 days pregnant, glowing and laughing at my own baby shower when the unimaginable happened. A pot of boiling, scalding hot milk was deliberately poured directly onto my pregnant belly, sending me crashing violently against the sharp edge of a kitchen island. As my water broke amid pools of blood and boiling fluid on the floor, I looked up through my tears and saw no remorse in my mother's eyes, only a sickening, vicious greed for a handful of diamonds. My own father stood frozen in the corner, too terrified of his toxic wife to lift a finger to save his dying daughter. They thought they had destroyed me, and they thought they would get away with it. But what I did next, from the confines of my hospital bed and through the cold lens of a legal video link, dismantled their lives so completely that they were left with absolutely nothing. Before I tell you the rest of this heartbreaking story and how I got my ultimate calculated revenge, I want to ask you something. I love reading your comments and knowing who is standing with me through this journey. Please take a second right now to drop a comment below. Where in the world are you watching this from? And what time is it over there right now? It truly warms my heart to see how far my story reaches and where all of you are connecting with me from. Let's go back to how this nightmare actually started. I have always been a giver. My husband Brandon and I built a peaceful life in Kingston. When we found out I was finally pregnant after years of trying, it felt like our dream had come true. But our happiness was shadowed by the recent loss of Brandon's father. A few months before, on his deathbed, he placed a velvet box in my hands. Inside was his family's most treasured heirloom, an antique diamond necklace and matching ring that had been passed down for generations. It wasn't just worth a fortune. It carried the legacy of his family. Looking at my growing belly, he whispered, "Donna, this is for my grandbaby. Keep it safe from the world." I promised I would. I locked the jewelry inside a hidden safe in our master bedroom dressing table and believed it was secure. What I didn't realize was that the real danger wasn't outside our home. It was already sitting at my dining table, smiling while plotting my ruin. To understand what happened next, you need to understand my family. My mother, Emma, and my younger sister, Sharon, judged everything by money. For as long as I could remember, I wasn't simply a daughter or sister to them. I was a safety net, an emergency fund, an ATM that never stopped working. When Brandon and I bought our home in Kingston, New York, my mother's first reaction wasn't happiness. Looking around the house, she said, "Must be nice to have a husband who can afford a wraparound porch while your own mother is driving a sedan with a clicking engine." That was our relationship in a single sentence. Every success Brandon and I earned through hard work was seen as something they deserved a share of. Sharon was Emma's golden child. She loved an expensive lifestyle she could never afford. Whenever her debts piled up or she fell behind on rent, Emma would come to me in tears. "She's your baby sister, Donna," she would sob. "If you don't pay her landlord, she'll be out on the street. How can you sleep in your big warm bed knowing your own flesh and blood is suffering?" And because I loved them, and because I naively believed that generosity could buy a family's genuine affection, I paid. I paid for Sharon's car repairs. I paid off Emma's past due utility bills. Over the course of 5 years, Brandon and I poured tens of thousands of dollars into keeping their heads above water, even when it meant stretching our own budget. But my father, Ronald, was perhaps the most tragic part of this toxic equation. Ronald wasn't an inherently evil man, but his cowardice made him just as dangerous as Emma. He had spent decades being verbally beaten down and browbeaten by my mother. He had completely surrendered his spine just to keep the peace in his own house. Whenever I would pull him aside and say, "Dad, you have to stop Mom from enabling Sharon's spending. It's draining all of us," he would just look down at his shoes, sigh deeply, and whisper, "You know how your mother gets, Donna. It's just easier to give her what she wants. Please don't make waves." He chose his own comfort over his daughter's protection over and over again. The moment Brandon's father passed away and left me that priceless antique diamond inheritance, Emma and Sharon's greed shifted into overdrive. They didn't see a beautiful family legacy meant for my unborn daughter. They saw a massive payday. Emma began dropping heavy, suffocating hints at every family dinner, saying things like, "An antique like that shouldn't just sit in a dark box, Donna. Sharon has a gala coming up. She should wear it. Or better yet, you should let us get it appraised. You don't even appreciate fine jewelry." I drew a hard line. I told them calmly, but firmly, that those diamonds were a sacred gift from my late father-in-law, and they would remain locked away until my daughter was old enough to inherit them. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought that even people as greedy as Emma and Sharon would respect the wishes of a dying man and the safety of a pregnant woman. I was dead wrong. The day of my baby shower arrived, and our home in Kingston was filled with beautiful pastel decorations, soft music, and the laughter of our close friends and neighbors. I was exactly 8 months and 10 days pregnant. My body was heavy, but my heart felt lighter than it had in a very long time. Brandon was being the perfect host, refilling drinks, laughing with our neighbors, and keeping a protective eye on me. Despite knowing the greedy nature of my mother, Emma, and my sister Sharon, I had extended an olive branch and invited them along with my father, Ronald. It was a family milestone, and I desperately wanted to believe that the impending arrival of an innocent baby girl could finally bring some genuine warmth into their cold hearts. By late afternoon, the party was winding down. A few guests were lingering on the front porch, and Brandon stepped outside to help one of our elderly neighbors down the steps and lock the front electric security gate. I felt a sudden fatigue wash over me. So, I decided to slip away upstairs to our master bedroom to grab a fresh maternity cardigan and take a quiet breath. As I walked down the carpeted hallway toward my bedroom, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. I stopped in my tracks. A strange, low whispering was coming from inside. My heart began to race with an instant sickening dread. I crept closer and looked through the gap. What I saw shattered my soul into a million pieces. My sister Sharon was kneeling on the floor next to my dressing table. She had a heavy metal crowbar in her gloved hands, and she had completely pried open the hidden drawer where my safe was kept. The safe was wide open, its digital lock bypassed or cracked. Sharon was eagerly snatching the velvet box containing my late father-in-law's antique diamond necklace and ring, stuffing them directly into her large designer purse. Standing right behind her, acting as a lookout, was my mother. Emma was rubbing her hands together, a terrifying, euphoric smirk on her face as she urged Sharon on. "Hurry up, you idiot. If Brandon comes back inside, we're trapped. Get the ring. That alone will pay off your entire debt." Adrenaline surged through my veins, wiping away all my physical fatigue. Rage, pure and unadulterated, took over. I threw the door open, the wood banging violently against the wall. "Get your filthy hands off my daughter's inheritance," I screamed, my voice shaking the entire room. Sharon gasped, dropping the crowbar onto the hardwood floor with a loud clang. She immediately clutched her purse to her chest like a cornered animal. Emma's face twisted from shock into a mask of pure malice. "Donna, don't be dramatic," Emma sneered, stepping between me and Sharon. "Your sister is in trouble. You don't need these diamonds. You have a wealthy husband. We are just taking what we deserve." "You are stealing from an unborn baby," I yelled, tears streaming down my face as I lunged past Emma. I grabbed the strap of Sharon's purse, pulling it with every ounce of strength I had. "I am done protecting you. I am done being your ATM. I am going downstairs right now. I'm getting Brandon, and we are calling the Kingston police. You are both going to jail." With a desperate wrench, I ripped the purse out of Sharon's hands, pulling the velvet jewelry box out and clutching it tightly against my chest. Sharon panicked, screaming, "Mom, do something! She's going to ruin my life!" Sharon bolted out of the bedroom and ran down the stairs toward the kitchen, terrified of being caught by the remaining guests. Emma's face went entirely dark. She chased me down the hallway and followed me right into the kitchen. In the kitchen, the large silver pot on the stove was filled to the brim with milk, which had been boiling rapidly for a special dessert. My father, Ronald, was standing near the kitchen island, holding a plate, watching everything unfold. "Dad, help me!" I cried out, breathless and trembling. They broke into my safe. They tried to steal the diamonds. Ronald looked at me, his eyes wide with fear, but then his gaze flicked to Emma. He took a step back, his hands shaking, completely paralyzed by his cowardice. He didn't say a word. He didn't move an inch to help me. "You think you're going to put my favorite daughter in prison?" Emma growled, her voice a demonic whisper. "I don't think so, Donna." Before I could even register what she was doing, Emma lunged toward the stove. She grabbed the heavy handles of the pot of boiling, scalding hot milk. With a sickening, deliberate motion, she lifted it and flung the entire contents directly at me. The agonizing, searing heat hit my pregnant belly first. It felt like fire was consuming my skin. I screamed a sound that didn't even sound human. The sheer shock of the burning pain and the force of the liquid threw me backward. My feet slipped on the wet tile floor, and I went crashing downward. The lower half of my pregnant stomach slammed with horrific crushing force right against the sharp, solid wooden corner of the kitchen island. A sharp, agonizing pop echoed through my body. A wave of warm fluid mixed with bright red blood instantly pulled beneath me on the kitchen floor. My water had broken. My baby was in distress. Through the blinding haze of pain, I looked up from the floor. Emma was standing over me, holding the empty pot, her eyes cold, calculating, and empty. Sharon was peering from the hallway, and my father stood frozen, a silent accomplice to my execution. I gasped for air, clutching my burning stomach, praying my little girl would survive the night. My agonizing scream tore through the walls of our house, shattering the quiet afternoon. Outside on the porch, Brandon heard it. Later, he told me it was a sound that haunted his nightmares, a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. Within seconds, the kitchen door flew open, and Brandon came charging in like a whirlwind. The scene that met his eyes was something out of a horror movie. I was convulsing on the floor, my maternity dress soaked in blood and boiling milk, my skin already beginning to blister. Beneath me, a terrifying pool of amniotic fluid and deep red blood was spreading across the white tiles. Right there, standing over my writhing body, was my mother, Emma. She was still clutching the heavy, steaming silver pot in her hands, her knuckles white, her face frozen in a mask of cold, unrepentant malice. My father, Ronald, was backed against the refrigerator, his hands over his mouth, whimpering like a dog, but doing absolutely nothing. Brandon didn't waste a single heartbeat. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He dropped to his knees beside me, his hands shaking violently as he touched my face. Donna, look at me. Stay with me," he cried, his voice breaking with a mixture of terror and fury. He immediately pulled out his phone and dialed 911, screaming into the receiver. "I need an ambulance and the police at 142 Riverview Lane immediately. My pregnant wife has been brutally assaulted. Her water broke. She's bleeding out and the attackers are still in my kitchen." As he hung up, he looked up at Emma, his eyes burning with a lethal rage that made both my mother and father take a step back. "If she loses this baby, or if anything happens to her, Brandon whispered, his voice trembling with a terrifying calm, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your miserable lives rotting in a concrete cell. Within less than 8 minutes, the sirens were wailing down our street. The flashing red and blue lights of the Kingston police cruisers and the paramedics illuminated our kitchen windows. The paramedics rushed inside with a stretcher. They immediately cut away the burnt fabric of my dress, applying cooling gel sheets to the severe secondary burns on my abdomen while checking for my baby's heartbeat. Her heart rate is dropping rapidly.
She's in severe fetal distress, the lead paramedic shouted, lifting me onto the gurney. We need to go right now. Prep the ER for an emergency C-section. As they wheeled me out, the Kingston police officers moved in. Brandon pointed straight at Emma and Ronald. The video camera on top of the cabinets recorded everything. Brandon barked at the sergeant. That woman threw boiling milk on my wife, and that man watched and helped her cover it up. The police didn't hesitate. They slammed Emma against the kitchen counter, forcing her arms behind her back, and clicked the cold metal handcuffs around her wrists. She began to screech. She attacked my daughter first. She's lying. But they ignored her, dragging her out the front door in full view of our remaining neighbors. Ronald was handcuffed next, trembling and crying, mumbling, I didn't do anything, I swear. They pushed him into the back of a separate police cruiser. Sharon, the snake who started it all, had already slipped out through the backsliding doors into the woods before the cops arrived. But the sergeant looked Brandon in the eye and said, We're putting out an APB on the sister. She won't get far. Brandon jumped into the back of the ambulance with me, holding my hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. As the door slammed shut and the Sarsons wailed, something shifted inside me. The blinding pain was still there, but the tears stopped flowing. The naive, forgiving daughter died on that kitchen floor. As I looked at Brandon's tear-stained face, a cold, calculated determination washed over me. I was going to survive this. My baby was going to survive this, and I was going to use every legal, financial, and emotional weapon in existence to utterly destroy Emma, Sharon, and Ronald. The doors of the emergency room at the health center in Kingston flew open, and I was swept into a whirlwind of bright fluorescent lights, shouting doctors, and the cold metal of surgical instruments. The pain in my abdomen was a white-hot, blinding fire, but my mind remained locked in that new, icy clarity. I remember the anesthesiologist placing a mask over my face, telling me to count backward from 10. My last thought before sliding into darkness wasn't a prayer for my own life. It was a fierce, desperate plea for my daughter's survival and a silent vow of absolute ruin for the monsters who put me here. When I finally blinked my eyes open hours later, the fog of anesthesia slowly lifted to reveal Brandon sitting by my bedside. His eyes were bloodshot, his face pale and worn. But the moment he saw my eyes open, a choked sob escaped his throat. He leaned down, pressing his forehead against mine. "She's alive, Donna," he whispered, his hot tears spilling onto my cheek. "Our baby girl is alive. She's tiny, but she's a fighter." Because she was born at exactly 8 months and 10 days, our daughter, whom we named Mia, was severely premature. The impact against the kitchen island had caused a partial placental abruption, cutting off her oxygen. The brilliant medical team had delivered her just in time via an emergency C-section. Mia was immediately transferred to the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU, hooked up to a tangle of tiny wires, monitors, and a CPAP machine inside a sterile glass incubator to help her underdeveloped lungs breathe. As for me, the physical toll was agonizing. The boiling milk had inflicted extensive secondary burns across my abdomen, requiring specialized silver sulfatazine dressings, heavy antibiotics to prevent infection, and a grueling daily regimen of wound care. According to standard U.S. medical protocols for severe maternal trauma and premature birth, the hospital staff refused to discharge us.
We spent 3 long, emotionally draining weeks in that hospital. Every single day, Brandon wheeled me down the long corridor to the NICU so I could press my hands against the warm glass of Mia's incubator, watching her tiny chest rise and fall. But we didn't waste a single moment of that time crying. While my body was healing, Brandon and I were building a legal fortress. We hired the most aggressive, high-profile criminal defense and civil litigation attorney in upstate New York. Our first and most powerful weapon was the hidden security camera Brandon had installed on top of the kitchen cabinets a year ago for home security. The footage was pristine, hide, and absolutely damning. It showed the entire sequence: Sharon running down the stairs with the stolen antique diamonds, me holding the velvet box, my mother Emma deliberately lifting the boiling pot of milk and hurling it at my stomach with clear intent to harm, and my father Ronald backing away, choosing to watch his daughter collapse in agony rather than intervene. On the 10th day of my hospital stay, our attorney walked into my room with a sharp, satisfied smile. The police had finally caught Sharon. She had been hiding out at a college friend's apartment in Albany, thinking she could lay low until the storm blew over. But the Kingston police tracked her phone pings, executed a warrant, and dragged her out in front of the entire apartment complex. She was booked for grand larceny, conspiracy, and trespassing. With all 3 of them behind bars awaiting their bail hearings, I sat up in my hospital bed and looked at our legal team. "I don't want a plea deal," I told them, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "I don't want mercy, and I don't want an apology. I want the maximum sentence the state of New York allows, and then I want to strip them of every single dollar they have ever touched." The day of the grand jury and sentencing hearing arrived, but I was not inside the cold, imposing courtroom of the Older County Courthouse. My severe burns were still healing under heavy dressings, and my immune system was highly compromised from the trauma.
More importantly, Mia had just been discharged from the NICU, and she required around-the-clock monitoring. Recognizing the extraordinary medical circumstances, the judge granted me a special legal provision under New York state law. I was allowed to deliver my victim impact statement and final testimony live via a secure, high-defin virtual video link from the comfort of my own living room. I sat on my sofa, rocking a sleeping Mia in my arms, with Brandon sitting firmly by my side. On the large monitor screen in front of us, the courtroom came to life. I saw the defense table, and my stomach turned. There they sat. Emma, Sharon, and Ronald, all dressed in bright orange jail jumpsuits, their wrists cuffed to their waist chains. Without her expensive makeup and designer clothes, Emma looked like a frail, bitter old woman. Sharon was weeping hysterically, her head buried in her hands while Ronald stared blankly at the floor. The picture of absolute defeat. When the judge called my name, the camera focused entirely on me. I looked directly into the lens, making direct eye contact with the judge, the jury, and the 3 monsters who had tried to destroy my family. My voice didn't shake. I didn't shed a single tear. I spoke with a cold, terrifying serenity that silenced the entire courtroom. "Your Honor," I began, my voice echoing through the court speakers. "The people sitting at that table are not my family. They are predators who hid behind the sacred title of blood relatives. For years, I gave them shelter, paid their debts, and fed their insatiable greed. And how did they repay me? By breaking into my home, attempting to steal my late father-in-law's sacred diamond legacy, and deliberately throwing boiling milk onto my 8-month pregnant belly." I leaned slightly closer to the camera, tilting it down just enough so the entire courtroom could see the edges of the thick, ugly burn scars tracing up my abdomen, right beside the fresh pink scar of my emergency C-section.
"They didn't just try to hurt me. They tried to murder my daughter before she could even take her first breath. My father watched it happen like a coward. My sister orchestrated the theft, and my mother flipped the switch on the stove. They showed no mercy to an innocent unborn child. I asked this court to show absolutely no mercy to them. Our attorney then presented the pristine kitchen surveillance footage. Watching the video in high definition, seeing the deliberate malice on Emma's face as she hurled the boiling liquid left the jury completely horrified. The defense's argument of a tragic kitchen accident was instantly obliterated. The judgment and the karma, the hammer of justice, fell upon them with crushing, brutal force. My mother, Emma, was found guilty of first-degree aggravated assault, attempted feticide, and child endangerment. The judge sentenced her to the maximum penalty, 15 years in a maximum security state prison without the possibility of early parole. My sister Sharon was convicted of grand larceny, criminal trespass, and conspiracy to commit assault. She was sentenced to 7 years in state prison. My father Ronald, for his criminal negligence and acting as a silent accomplice to a violent felony, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. But their punishment didn't stop behind prison bars. Our civil attorney launched a devastating financial counterattack. We filed a multi-million-dollar personal injury and emotional distress lawsuit against them. Because the criminal conviction was so clear-cut, the judge immediately ruled in our favor. The court issued a sweeping order to freeze all of Emma and Sharon's bank accounts. To pay off the astronomical medical bills from my burn treatments and Mia's extended NICU stay, the court ordered the immediate foreclosure and public auction of Emma and Ronald's family home. They were left completely, utterly ruined. They lost their freedom, their reputation, their family, and every single cent to their names. They went to prison knowing that the very house they lived in was being sold off to pay for the medical care of the baby they tried to destroy. Today, as I sit on our wraparound porch in Kingston, the New York sun warming my face, I look down at Mia, laughing in her stroller. Brandon walks out, handing me a warm cup of tea, and presses a kiss to my forehead. The antique diamond necklace and ring are sitting safely in a secure bank vault deposit box, waiting for the day Mia turns 18. The scars on my skin will eventually fade, but the peace in our home is permanent. The fire of their greed completely consumed them, leaving nothing but ashes. While Brandon, Mia, and I are finally safe, whole, and beautifully free. Sitting here today with my daughter Mia, safe in my arms, I realize that blood doesn't make you family. Love, respect, and protection do. I had to go through the most agonizing betrayal of my life to finally learn that you cannot cure someone else's greed with your own kindness. Karma came for Emma, Sharon, and Ronald, because justice always finds a way, even when it has to knock down the walls of your own home. But now I want to turn this over to you. Looking at everything I went through, do you think I did the right thing by cutting them off so completely and pushing for the absolute maximum legal punishment? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I read every single one of them. And if you learned something valuable from my story today, please subscribe and hit the bell icon to join us daily. Thank you for standing with